Should I leave my wife? Hi everyone, strap in for a doozy. To give some much-needed context to this situation, I 27 years old met my now wife 27 years old via a dating app in late 2015. We spoke for a month before meeting in person for the first time, where I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes, and we were long distance for 3 years before moving in together in 2018. I moved away from my family and friends, and we found a house in the same town she was already living. I proposed the following year, and then we got married in 2020. We then started trying for a baby. It took some time, and the pregnancy was very rough for my wife and ended up being a C-section. However, our son was born in October 2021 and is now nearly 3 years old. This is where things get complicated. Leading up to our wedding, one of the bridesmaid sisters had a boyfriend who came to the wedding as their plus one. My wife ended up becoming friends with said boyfriend. A few months after we had gotten married, they were getting closer and people started to comment on it. Me not wanting to be an overbearing, jealous husband, just passed it off as people of different genders can just be friends, right? Some more context on what I think drew them together is myself and my wife are very introverted people, with her being slightly more outgoing. I prefer to stay home rather than go out, and on my part may have not been putting in enough effort on organizing dates outside of the house. My impression at the time was that we enjoyed doing things at home, and now she had a friend to go do outdoor things with. They got closer over time and were best friends during the time we were trying for a baby. People would keep commenting and I would brush it off to try and be supportive of her having a close friend, as she had in the past struggled to make friends which I could relate to. They clashed heads quite a lot, and I would often be a shoulder to cry on for my wife during these times. Their disagreements seemed intense, and at one point they stopped being friends altogether. This was a very emotional time for my wife, and given how upset she was about the situation, it seemed almost like she was going through a breakup rather than the ending of a friendship. Eventually they reconciled and became friends again. One night while they were out together, I noticed that my wife had not logged out of Facebook on her laptop. Stupidly and out of curiosity, I decided to snoop on their messages, even though I knew it was wrong. The messages revealed something that shocked me. It turned out that he was in love with her, and she had admitted to having developed feelings for him as well. However, she also expressed in those messages that she was not acting on her feelings because of me and our relationship. This revelation hit me hard, and I confronted her about what I had seen. She explained that he had confessed his feelings to her before and that she had turned him down, which was what had caused their earlier fallout and the period when they were no longer friends. She said they had later decided to reconcile on the understanding that they would only be friends. However, over time she admitted that she too had developed feelings for him, though she insisted she had not acted on them. Wanting to trust her and preserve our relationship, I decided to leave it at that and move forward. By October 2021, close to Halloween, our son had just been born, and life had taken on a new rhythm. My workplace organized a quiz event at the office, and after it ended, my colleagues suggested going out for drinks. Even though I am not a fan of such outings, I decided to join them. Later that evening we ended up meeting with my wife, my sister-in-law, the best friend, and a few other people. Despite my usual dislike for places like clubs, I found myself there that night. The combination of alcohol, the atmosphere, and the whispers of colleagues and friends about how the best friend seemed to be too close to my wife began to stoke a deep frustration and anger within me. The situation escalated when my friends and colleagues started making an effort to separate my wife and the best friend while simultaneously trying to bring my wife and me closer together. This intervention upset the best friend, and he decided he was going to leave the club. My wife followed him, which further fueled the whispers around me. Someone made a comment about how I should go after them because it wasn't right, and that comment was the final straw that pushed my anger over the edge. I went downstairs to find them, and when I did, I saw them sitting on a sofa together. They were embracing in what appeared to be a goodbye, but in my angry and intoxicated state, it felt like far more than that. The sight was too much for me to handle. I approached them, told the best friend that it was time for him to leave, and without thinking, I punched him in the face. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Club staff intervened to separate us, and I left the club immediately, walking all the way home. By the time I reached home, the adrenaline and anger had worn off, leaving me feeling sober but deeply shaken by what had happened. The next few days revealed more about their relationship. My wife convinced him not to call the police on me after the incident, and she expressed uncertainty about whether she wanted to stay with me. She said my punching him made her question how safe I was as a person, even though I had never punched anyone before and have always hated confrontation, something that will become more evident as this post goes on. During our conversations, she revealed that while they had not engaged in full sexual intercourse, they had been intimate in other ways. This had stopped once she was heavily pregnant with our son. She admitted that she had been feeling guilty for a while and that their inappropriate behavior had not resumed after our son was born. She confessed that she had been unfaithful and that the trust between us had been broken. Despite everything, I wanted to stay together and work on rebuilding our trust. I still loved her deeply and wanted to provide our son with a stable and united family. After a lot of discussion, we decided to stay together and agreed that she would go back to being just friends with the best friend. However, during this time he was actively trying to convince her to leave me and be with him instead. His arguments were not very compelling since he was living with his parents and unemployed, unable to provide for anyone, let alone take on the responsibilities of a relationship or family life. A few days after the ordeal, the three of us sat down for a conversation. It was an uncomfortable and tense meeting, and during it, the best friend presented her with an ultimatum. Him or me. My wife is notorious for being terrible at communication, which made the situation even more difficult. She often avoids expressing her feelings directly, preferring others to do the talking while she listens. The best friend, however, insisted on hearing her choice directly from her. He wanted her to say it out loud so there would be no ambiguity about her decision. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, she chose me, though her decision was made in silence. This was not enough for the best friend, who pressed her to explicitly say that she was done with him romantically. After a long and awkward pause, she finally said the words he was waiting for. At that moment, I thought the situation had finally come to an end. Surprisingly, after everything, the best friend and I shared a strange hug. I'm not entirely sure why it happened, but perhaps it was his subconscious way of apologizing to me for the chaos he had brought into our lives. It was a moment that felt oddly surreal, given the turmoil of the past few days, but I hoped it marked the beginning of a return to some kind of normalcy for all of us. Despite my wife saying she was done with him romantically, they remained friends, but not for long. My wife was continuously guilty because she would occasionally slip up and kiss him. Me being the dolt I am, excused these mess-ups for the sake of trying to keep our relationship intact and our family whole. A few months after this, she broached the subject of an open relationship, a way she could have all she wanted with none of the guilt or consequences. I could see she was struggling. We were both very tired from looking after a baby, and she had suffered very hard with postnatal depression and had suffered depression at the start of our relationship and prior. She had gotten a lot better and was off her medication by the time we were engaged and getting married, but the pregnancy plus this whole weird love triangle had brought her right back. So being the idiot I was, agreed to an open relationship to make her happy. This open relationship lasted until around April of this year. She was happy having her family life with husband and child with me, and then her outgoing fun part of life with the best friend. I did not see another woman during this, as I was committed to my wife even if she wasn't fully committed to me. My main reasoning for sticking this out was mostly for the sake of my son. I wanted him to have a proper family, and I just wanted a simple family life. The other part was fear or shame. If I left, it would all come out and everyone would know. I have a good relationship with my in-laws, and my family is currently planning to move down to where we are because they want to spend more time with my son. If I leave, it will ruin so many relationships, and I fear the blame will be on me for not stopping it sooner, so I soldiered on even though I was miserable most of the time. I did it for my son and my family so they might be happy, and seeing them happy would help me forget or at least block it out. During this whole open relationship, while things on my side were fine, it was far from balanced. We had family trips and holidays, and my wife and I were still able to be intimate with each other, though these moments were rare due to the demands of parenting a young child. Despite this, my wife wasted no time becoming physically involved with the best friend. They would go out in the evenings a few times a week and sometimes even go away for weekends together. He was uncomfortable even hearing my name mentioned, so I am sure that when they were together, they pretended like I didn't exist. What stung even more was that they had taken our son on day trips to farms and soft play areas while I was at work. This was one of the very few times I gathered the courage to speak up. I told her that he was my son and that family activities should remain within the actual family. On the other hand, I was forced to hear his name constantly. Whenever they had a disagreement or argument, I was the one she turned to for comfort. I became the empathetic listener, even though my advice or suggestions seemed to fall on deaf ears. Despite the emotional strain, every time I felt close to caving and leaving, thoughts of my son would come to mind. The idea of him growing up in a fractured home stopped me every time. By April, everything came to a head. My wife confided that she and the best friend had been fighting more frequently. She said he had been spending more time on his phone when they were together, which upset her. In a half-hearted attempt to provoke a reaction from him, she broke up with him. However, he took her at her word and ended the relationship completely. She immediately backpedaled, trying to get him back, but he went no contact with her. The aftermath was devastating for her. She was inconsolable for weeks, physically ill and crying constantly. During this time, I stepped in alongside her parents to care for our son while she tried to cope with the loss. Despite everything, she made several attempts to reach out to him, but each time she did, it caused her to relapse emotionally and undo any progress she had made in moving on. At one point, she even suggested going back to being just friends with him, but this didn't work either. He either couldn't handle being just friends or didn't want to. They met a few times, often with our son present, perhaps as a way to ensure they wouldn't become intimate again if the temptation arose. However, even this arrangement didn't last. He told her that he couldn't continue the friendship and fully cut her off again, leading her to block him on everything. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of relief. It was as if my efforts had finally been rewarded in some way. By staying and enduring everything, I felt like I had my family back. I began to hope that we could finally move forward and that my life might return to some semblance of normalcy. Now it is almost September, and my wife has been trying to take her mind off of everything that happened by focusing on herself and finding new outlets. She has gotten into writing spiritual journals and has also started her own business. Before becoming a full-time stay-at-home mom, she worked in childcare, and she is now using her qualifications and experience in that field to build her business. It has been doing very well, and I have been fully supportive of her efforts. I helped her with purchasing a domain, setting up emails, and creating a website for her business. Seeing her thrive in this area has been a positive change, but it hasn't alleviated the underlying issues in our relationship. My main concern now is that I don't think she loves me the same way anymore. The last time she and the best friend were intimate, she was in a very emotionally vulnerable state. Based on what she told me, he took advantage of her vulnerability, and they had sex before he ultimately dumped her. This incident was a significant factor in her being physically ill and emotionally shattered afterward. At the time, she expressed a desire to be intimate with me again, explaining that she didn't want the last time she had sex to be with him, as it had been a deeply traumatic experience for her. She took the time she needed to recover, and eventually we were intimate again. For a while, it seemed like we were on the path to restoring that part of our relationship. However, after a few more times, she told me she didn't want to have sex anymore. She even cited one of her mom friends as an example, saying something along the lines of X and Y don't have sex in their relationship. While it wasn't as though we had many opportunities to be intimate due to our busy lives and parenting responsibilities, I had always tried to initiate when I thought the time was right. From that point forward, however, the answer was always no. She told me that sex isn't the entirety of a relationship, and I understood that. However, I also communicated to her that intimacy is one of the primary ways I express and feel love. Despite my efforts to explain my feelings, nothing changed. We have not had sex since then, and the most I can get from her now is cuddling or a quick peck on the lips. The emotional and physical distance between us has grown, and I am left wondering if she sees me as more of a companion or co-parent than as her partner in a romantic or loving sense. I was feeling insecure because of this and tried to discuss this with her, that I felt unhappy and unsure about where we were in the relationship. She had said that things were fine and we were staying together for our son. I said it was more than that for me because I still loved her the same. She had asked if I wanted to split up, and I asked her if she loved me, and she said she did, and as usual my heart was not in it and I couldn't commit to what would be the harder decision of leaving and decided to stay. I fear she is staying because it's the easy option or because she has no choice since her other option left her. She may be hopeful that the best friend will return into her life and then she will leave me. I had asked her if he came back would she leave me for him, and she said she didn't know, it would depend on the situation at the time. I had made my stance clear that if he came back in any form I was done and would leave. Now I am still feeling just as stuck or trapped as I felt during the open relationship. I am a good husband and father. I stuck with her during her difficult pregnancy. I went to all the scans and appointments post-birth. I've been actively involved with raising my son. I work Monday to Friday, but I take over in the evenings before he goes to bed. I'm cooking most of the time, and when she does cook it's normally just freezer meals when I'm making meals from scratch with fresh ingredients. Her main gripe, which drove her to the best friend originally, was that we never went on dates outside of the house, but she never expressed this to me, so how could I have known? I said that you should have told me and I could have done something, not gone and slept with someone else and had a whole weird love triangle thing. I am actively trying to put more effort into dates. A lot is going on, so we don't really have a lot of time for date nights out on a whim because we need to organize child care. I know that wasn't the case before we had a kid, but again it wasn't communicated to me, and us both being introverted I thought we were perfectly good at home. COVID lockdowns may not have helped too, but I had attempted a few dates after lockdowns were clear. I feel like now anything I do is just going to be a comparison to the best friend, that I'm only doing it because they were doing it together. Even after everything, I still love my wife. I don't know if it is the same way anymore. I'm actively trying to put an effort in, but I don't think it's being returned. But everything I try and express that we don't get anywhere and continue on going. She has never wanted to be the one to make decisions. She's let this whole thing play out, and it took the best friend making the decision himself for their relationship to end. Does it have to be me that makes the decision here? If I leave, where do either of us go? Where does my son go, and how much more will change or be ruined as a result of my choice? I've had no one to turn to, and I've tossed this whole thing around in my mind for the past few years, thinking, why is it down to me to do this? I let the open relationship happen to avoid consequences and to keep everyone but myself happy, and I'm still doing it now. Can I be happy again, truly happy with my family, if I continue to stick it out and put the effort in? Will my wife see me and love me how she used to, or is she too hung up still on the best friend and is waiting for him to come back so she can leave me, or so I am forced to leave? My priority is my son. I want what's best for him, and I've been content in my misery to be able to see him as much as I do. So happy. If I leave, I may not get to see him as much. I only currently see him after I finish work and on the weekends. I love my wife and I want her to be happy, but have I sacrificed my feelings for others too much? Is this the one time I've got to put myself first and leave? If you've made this far, thank you. I hope it makes sense. I am very stuck and lost and many other things and need some help, and I've put off asking for it for too long, either to save myself from a truth I don't want to hear or to spare my family and friends from all of this. He posted an update. I don't think I've ever been so thoroughly grilled in my life, but I can honestly say that I needed it. I think I needed to be brought down from the endless cycle of thoughts in my own head, to hear the raw truth from an outside perspective without giving myself the space to make excuses or justifications in my mind. This is my reality, as sad and pathetic as it is. I am very broken, and it's become clear that I need fixing. For everyone who suggested getting a paternity test, I can confidently say that he is my son. He couldn't look more like me if he tried. While I understand the suspicion, my soon-to-be ex-wife and the other man didn't have sex until after he was born. It seems they were courteous enough to wait until Mr. Doormat was ready to lay down and open the relationship for them. Of course, there's always the possibility they could be lying about the timing, but given that she has made it clear she wants to be with him more than she wants to be with me, I feel like if my son were his, it would have been the perfect way for her to make a clean break. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who gave me the truth, no matter how harsh it was. I needed to hear it, even if it was painful. To those who said I needed to leave, thank you for the clarity. It's been a long and torturous road of trying to hold on to something that was never really there, and your words have helped me see what I need to do. If anyone is looking for a new doormat, clearly I am a prize to behold. I apologize for the length of the original post. I had so much stored inside me and I felt the need to air it all out. For those who read it all, read part of it, or didn't read it but still gave the clear advice to leave, I appreciate it more than I can express. I know now that I need therapy. I need time to be alone and heal before I can even think about loving someone again. It's coming up on 9 years, and that's a significant amount of time that I now realize was spent holding on to false hope that things would improve. I see now that it's truly over. The one good thing to come out of all of this is my son, and I've come to understand that staying in this situation will do him no good in the long term. Tonight, I finished work and went to pick up my son from my in-laws' house, where he had been after having dinner. My wife was out for the day with her sibling, so I brought him home, got him ready for bed, and read him some bedtime stories until he fell asleep. Once he was asleep, I found myself unable to rest. I kept reopening the original post and reading through the comments. Each one echoed the same sentiment, unanimously telling me that I needed to leave. As recently as 30 minutes ago, my wife came home. I knew I couldn't wait any longer, so I initiated a brief but honest conversation with her. I told her that we should split up, and to my surprise, she agreed. I explained that I hadn't felt respected in a long time and that our relationship had begun to feel more like a friendship or a roommate arrangement than a marriage. I shared my feelings, telling her that it seemed like I was the safe option for her to hold on to, not out of love, but for security and convenience. I also expressed the thoughts I had been reflecting on regarding the effects of this situation on our son. I told her that continuing in this way wouldn't be healthy for him in the long run. I admitted that I had felt walked over and disrespected, and that staying in this marriage was preventing me from being the father he truly needs. I can't raise my son to be strong, self-assured, and respectful if I'm not embodying those qualities myself. I can't be the man I need to be for him while allowing myself to remain in a relationship that diminishes me. While it was a difficult conversation, it felt like the first step toward reclaiming a sense of self and setting a better example for my son. She left and started to get teary before she left, which I didn't expect, as she had rarely shown much of a care the last time I half attempted to convey my feelings of the relationship, so maybe she does care more than I thought, but not enough to undo everything that's happened. She has gone to sleep at her parents' and I am now alone in my house with my son. Now everything will change, but it will be for the better. However long it takes. I'm gonna try and get some sleep. Let's read some comments. First comment was, even if she had all the care in the world, she couldn't undo everything that's happened. The past is a done deal and could at best only be slowly mended to a greater or lesser degree. The damage could be repaired, but the real scar that never goes away is memory. You now know what she is capable of, and part of you will always consider that even if you reconciled and found a level of trust and happiness. I think you probably didn't mean undoing in the literal sense because you likely know better, but I mention it just in case there was a real expectation on your part. Second comment was, good for you. After you opened the relationship, you were doomed. You just did not know it. There was no way to win. You gave her what she wanted, but she also needed you to fight for her. As Reddit has taught me, for the most part, open relationships may be okay short-term, but do not last. Nothing is ever the same again. Shine up your spine, be the best dad you can be, and get out there to find someone who loves you for you,